Hey, what's good, y'all? It's Massive Headache here, and today I'm going to be showing each and every one of you how you can make some ambient new jazz beats in the style of Gunnr. Now, most of you probably know Gunnr from his vocal preset videos. That is what he is most known for, but I personally know him from his music. Songs like Way Too Much, Empty, and Nothing Left are some of my favorite of his. And I cooked up this beat thinking that Gunnr would flow really well on it, and then it matches his style very similarly. So without any further ado, the beat that we're going to be going over today sounds a little something like this. So the first thing that we're going to go over is the melody, and the first thing in terms of the melody that we're going to go over are the chords. And the chords for this melody are stupid simple. So right now we are in the key of C sharp major, and our chord progression is going from the 4 to the 4 to the 1 to the 1. Doing something like this, going from the 4 to the 1, is, I hate saying this word, but it's like a cheat code in terms of making melodies. Because if you don't want your chords to be doing too much, but you still want them to sound good, going from the 4 to the 1 or even going from the 5 to the 1 is a safe bet. Because that 4 chord builds tension in the melody and the 1 releases it. And I'm just playing very basic chords here. Right here, I'm playing an F major 7. With this chord, I move that 7 down by 2 semitones. So then it's hitting the D sharp, which is the 6. And then when we go down to the 1, it's playing a C sharp major 7. And then it goes to a C sharp major 7, but I put the 7th up by 1 semitone, and that basically just makes it an octave inversion, meaning I took the root note and put it up by an octave. And I have these chords playing on 3 different presets, and the entire melody is made using Diva by Yuhi. Not sponsored content at all, but I just got the plugin and I absolutely love it. It's perfect for making beats like these, and it has a bunch of unique sounds and a super intuitive interface. So the first preset that I used is the Strawberry Deals preset, and this is what that sounds like with the chords. The next preset that I used is the Ice Picks preset, and yet again, this is what that sounds like. And the final preset that I used for these chords is the Cozy Jupiter pad. This pad more so acts as a texture, and that's because of the instance of Portal that I threw on it. And I just have it on this custom preset that firstly gives it a bit crusher or bit reducer, and secondly just gives it a sporadic like volume gate automation. So now that we've gone over chords, let's go over the second part of our melody being top lines. And I have 2 top line melodies in this entire melody. The first is this super like rough analog sounding harp, yet again from Diva, and the pattern that it's playing relates to our chords. So the bass notes of our top line melody are actually the 5th of the chords that we're playing. So if you'll recall, our chord progression was going from F sharp, which is the 4, to C sharp, which is the 1. And to get the 5th of those chords, I just put that up by 7 semitones. And then from there, I'm just using the top notes of all of our chords. So the first chord was a F sharp major 7, so the top note is the 7th, being F. The next chord, the top note was D sharp, so on and so forth. I do this because I wanted this top line melody to kind of stay tucked in the back a little bit. So by keeping it so similar to the chords, it's not going to stand out a ton to the listener. So with that being said, this is what it sounds like. Now, the next portion of the top line melody I did want to stand out, and that's going to be this classic new jazz analog brass type sound. And the preset that I used is the Single Cell Worm, yet again from Diva. And yet again, I have a very simple top line melody playing, but this top line melody is making use of some half step intervals, which provide a little bit of tension in our melody. And that tension is being released yet again with these 5ths of the chords. Now, this top line melody is a little bit more complex and out there, and that's because I wanted this secondary top line melody to stand out more than the first one, mainly because this analog brass sound that we use is a huge staple in new jazz. So with that being said, this is what it sounds like. Alright, so now let's quickly go over the final portion of the melody, being vocals. Vocals are pretty optional for these kind of beats, but I find that it assists very well in adding a human aspect to your beats, as well as creating a nice sense of atmosphere. So with that being said, the vocals that I used in this beat are just some cymatics vocals. And if you're like me and you have a ton of drum kits in your files, if you just go to the search bar down here and type in vocals, you're gonna get a ton of vocal samples that you can pull from. And don't be afraid to repurpose vocal samples like how I did here. Like, I'm pretty sure this vocal loop is just a stem to a cymatics loop. But yeah, with that being said, this is what our entire melody sounds like together. Alright, so now that we've gone over constructing the melody, let's go over some melodic effects. And I want to preface this by saying, if you want to learn how I mix my melodies, you can check out the video in the top right. Still don't know which one's right. And in that video, I go over in detail how I mix my melodies. But what I want to cover in this tutorial is mainly just like artistic melodic effects. And the one that I want to go over is going to be Shaperbox. So for this beat, as you can see, I have a Shaperbox automation clip right here. During the first part of our beat, which is our chorus, the Shaperbox mix level is at 0. But during the next part of our beat, which is our verse, the Shaperbox mix level is at 100. I do this just to make our beat a little bit more interesting and add some variation. And not only that, but it also makes our second chorus more impactful when it comes back around. As for the actual effect inside Shaperbox, all I did was get the time effect, go to the stutter panel down below, and just pick one of these presets. I found that this one worked best with the melody that I had at the moment, and I just have that instance of Shaperbox on the entire melody bus. So with that being said, this is what our melody sounds like during the verse. Yet again, just something to make the verse a little bit more interesting. Alright, so now that we've gone over all aspects of the melody, let's go over the drums. And I'm kind of gonna breeze through the majority of these drums because the drums are relatively simple. The first thing that I threw down is this 808 pattern, and it's mostly just following the root note and playing a pretty basic pattern, aside from this last note here that is playing the 5th of our chord playing at the moment. After that, I threw down a clap, threw down this counter snare, and then I threw down this rim. Alright, so now let's go over some more important aspects of the drums. The first is going to be the most important aspect of the drums, which is the hi-hats. For new jazz beats, typically you want your hi-hat pattern to have a similar bounce and cadence to drill hi-hat patterns. You're going to want to integrate that same pattern as drill hi-hats. And just to make these hi-hats more fun, I added in a bunch of rolls that play around not only with the velocity, but also with the pitch. This just makes the hi-hats a little bit more interesting, and since this is such an important aspect of the beat, I didn't want to skimp out. So yeah, for hi-hat patterns like these, just have them playing a drill-like pattern, have some rolls, and don't be afraid to play around with the velocity and the pitch. The next thing that I threw down in the drums is going to be this cymbal. And if you've been watching my tutorials for a while, you know that I usually don't use cymbals in my beats. Typically, this right here would be an open hat playing this pattern, but I decided to use a cymbal today, and I really like how it came out because it gave it a much more airy and anthemic feel. So this is what that sounds like. And the final aspect of the drums that I threw down is going to be this cowbell. And I've never done something like this, but I'm glad I experimented in the way that I did. Because what I did is I took the cowbell and made it more of a tonal aspect than a percussion. So the cowbell is tuned to C, and I have it hitting on the 5th of the chords playing at the moment, just like our top line melody. So the 5th of the first chord is C sharp yet again, and the 5th of the second chord is G sharp. So yeah, with that being said, this is what the drums sound like in their entirety. So now, with all of that being said, this is what the melody and the drums sound like all together. And I'm going to show you the chorus first, and then I'll show you the verse with the Shaperbox automation. with that being said, that is going to pretty much cover how to make some ambient new jazz beats in the style of Gunnr. I thoroughly hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and learned something new. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the comments down below and I will do my best to answer them. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon where I post the FLPs to all of my beats in all of my videos. That way, if you wanted to study the arrangement, mixing, mastering, all that kind of stuff, it's right at your fingertips. And finally, consider subscribing as I post 1 tutorial a week and 2 sound kits a month. Other than that, that's going to be it. Peace.